In this session, we are going to talk about symbolic interactionism theory. Let's get started. Symbolic interactionism theory is a micro-level theory that focuses on relationship among individuals within the society. So what sort of a relationship that you share among um, other individuals in the society is something symbolic interactionism focuses on. Communication, the exchange of meaning through language and symbols, is believed to be the way in which people make sense of their social worlds, something that we have been discussing over a couple of lectures in the past few weeks, that how communication plays a very significant role in helping people make sense of the social worlds that they sustain or live in. George Herbert Mead, an American sociologist, proposed this theory, but it was his student, Herbert Blumer, who coined the term symbolic interactionism and outlined these basic premises. So, what does Blumer talk about? Human interacts with things based on the meanings ascribed to those things. Okay, any interaction that happens at a human level with a particular thing, keeping that in mind, is based out of the meaning that is generated. The ascribed meaning of things come from our interaction with others in the society. Okay, how we interact with others and how we engage ourselves in the society could help us give meaning to things that we engage in or we tend to offer. The meanings of those things are interpreted by a person when dealing with things in specific circumstances. So specific circumstances in which people can interpret or understand certain things can create meaning out of those things. For example, if you love books, a symbolic interactionist might propose that you learned that books are good or important in the interactions you had with family, friends, or in school, or maybe your family had a special reading time each week, getting you a library card was treated as a special event, or bedtime stories were associated with warmth and comfort. So books, your love for books, that you are a bibliophile, can be perceived from a symbolic interactionist point of view as this kind of situations that you tend to engage in or interact in with your family, friends, or anybody, people who know you. They would know that your love for books means a world to you, and they can arrange things and for you that can make you happy or that can escalate your status in society or how you perceive in society. So these sort of things gives you an idea about what symbolic interactionism could possibly mean. Social scientists who apply symbolic interactionist thinking look for patterns of interaction between individuals, how people engage and converse with each other. Social scientists tend to apply symbolic interactionism to that. Their studies often involve observation of one-on-one interactions. Okay, they tend to stand out and observe how people engage at one-on-one level or interpersonal level. For example, while a conflict theorist studying a political protest might focus on class difference, a symbolic interactionist would be more interested in how individuals in the protesting group interact, as well as the signs and symbols protesters use to communicate their message. For example, let's take the anti-CI, CA, NRC protest that happened across India. Now, a conflict theorist, somebody who is studying political protest, might look at what sort of class differences exist within the protesting circle, whether middle class is contributing to the protest or the lowest economic strata of the society is contributing more, or their upper middle class or upper class people who are also taking time out from their daily works and testing because they strongly believe that it is an anti-democratic policy or rule or regulation that was proposed, and as part of the civil citizenry, it is their responsibility to come and contribute. So depending on that, a conflict theorist would look at it, whereas a symbolic interactionist would be interested in how these communities are engaging or how those individuals are connecting with themselves, or what sort of a reference is being reflected when we look at the relationship that coexist between them? Or what are the signs and symbols that those protesters are using or used in order to communicate the kind of messages that they wanted to, as far as this protest is concerned? So being one of the most commonly used theories, there are many scholars and theorists who contribute towards the idea of symbolic interactionism, how symbolically people interact or engage with each other. Symbolic interactionism is the way we learn to interpret and give meaning to the world through our interactions with others. Plunkett once remarked, okay, symbolic interactionism is the way we learn to interpret. Our idea of interpretation of a particular thing, of a particular event, of a particular engagement comes through our interaction with other people and how uh, they perceive things or how you perceive things through those conversations. The symbolic interactionism analyzes society by the descriptive meanings that people have given to objects, events, and behavior. X behavior is defined in this way. Y event is a good event to go to, or X object is something that we must own, or that could be symbolic of our class structure. So the behavioral pattern of the people, how they consume things or how they tend to gravitate towards particular incidents or events, or how their behaviors remain the same or they change from time to time, will be based on those descriptive meanings that people tend to accord by looking at the perceptual um, incidents or the perceptual understanding rather than objective truth. So there is an objective truth that is associated with the kind of objects that exist, or the kind of events that occur, or the kind of behavioral pattern that can be noticed. But the point is, when we talk about this sort of a theory in under the structure of symbolic interactionism, we tend to, look at them or try to understand them from their descriptive beliefs, belief system or structure, rather than looking at it from an objective point of view. This descriptive belief and meanings are nothing but interpretations given by the people. Thus, the theory suggests that society is based on the interpretations of the people. Okay, everything that happens inside the society is a part of symbolic interactionism, and how people understand and interpret each other. Um, that's how society operates or exists. The people interpret each other's behavior, and a social bond is thus created, which is grounded on this interpretation. So our interpretation of others is based on how they tend to behave, and what kind of a social bonding that exists between us. These interpretations are often called as definition of a situation, because they just define the situations. How I am going to act or react in a particular situation, or what are my emotional expressions when I am placed in a certain context, or within a certain community, would define that situation for me, as well as it would define that situation for others as far as they are concerned or I'm concerned. So how we tend to look at it and how we interpret and understand by looking at different situations. This theory also says that how humans develop a complex set of symbols that gives meaning to the world from their perspective. So within our perspective, or within our understanding, how we tend to create symbolic structures by giving meaning to the world. The meanings can be molded from interactions with the society. It's not a static one, it's a dynamic one. Our understanding of the world, or meanings that we tend to associate with different things, changes while our engagement with the world. Now, at one point in time, for example, when we are growing up in school, we might take the slam book culture very seriously. That I'm feeling in somebody's slam book, so all the things that I'm writing in those slam books, all the information that I'm sharing with my friends, or they are curious about, is something that I'm going to express truthfully. As you grow older, you realize that those kind of things might make or might not make sense at this point in time when you are 19 or 20, and your understanding of the world has so much changed from when you were 7 years old or you were 10 years old. Just for the fact that your aims and ambitions in life also tends to change or evolve over a period of time. This happens because your understanding and your interpretation of the world um, has changed over a period of time because of your constant engagement with the society or people in the society. And these interactions are also subjectively interpreted by them to suit the meaning in accordance to the existing symbols. So there are these symbolic structures that are there in the society, and then we look at those symbolic structures, and then we tend to draw meaning from them. And then while our engagement with other people about those particular incidents, events, narratives, or things, our perceptions could also change. How I would look at cosmic forces is different than how you look at cosmic forces. And my interaction with a rationalist or with a scientist can influence me to interpret cosmos in a very different way. And if I'm looking at it from a mystic point of view, or if I'm engaging with, you know, a monk or somebody who is deeply engaged in metaphysical or spiritual world, their understanding or their philosophy about the cosmic world would be different. So if I'm listening to that person, it could help me mold my understanding, my interpretation in a different way than when I'm engaging with a rationalist or a or somebody who engages from a scientific point of view. You know, so it can be said that if we need to understand the behavioral patterns of the society, we need to understand the existing symbols. That's why symbols, signs play a very significant role, or the kind of messaging that happens around those symbols. Why a certain structure is built there? What is the geometry of that structure? What is the science of the rationality behind those kind of structures? Why X symbols are representative of certain things in the society? How does they offer meaning? So the moment we start deeply engaging ourselves or researching or tend to do a rather in-depth study of those things, it can offer us some sort of an understanding about the behavioral patterns that exist in the society, and we can respond accordingly. We can react to those behavioral patterns easily by doing those kind of deep studies around the existing symbolic structures. The interactions which molded the symbols are, they also tend to create some sort of a social structure or the other. Look at caste, how we tend to take those people who come out of cars seriously than those people who walk by foot. Okay, so the staggering difference between two social strata of society, to set of individuals who belong to different social strata of society, would draw that kind of an impression. How we can treat a rich person, how we can treat a poor person. How does the concept of richness and you know being poor gets associated with those sort of people? It could be from clothes, it could be from conversations, it could be from the kind of experiences they can share. So we tend to judge. So in the process, understand that we are constantly interpreting them. The symbolic interactionism also articulates that the individuals build a sense of self-identity through this interactions with society. So it tells a lot about your own understanding about your own self, how I tend to look at people, how we tend to look at incidents, events, narratives. Our understanding of all those things also gives us some sort of judgment or some sort of a framework of self-identity, how we perceive ourselves vis-a-vis interactions with the society. Bloom also suggested that there are three core principles of this theory. What are these three core principles? Like, let's look at it. First is meaning, second is language, third is thought. Okay, these principles lead to conclusion about a person's self and socialization into the larger community. So in the larger community, our constant engagement, our communication and exchanges tells a lot about our own self and our process of socialization. Why I tend to socialize with a certain kind of crowd more than the other kind of crowd. How I have stayed away from X um, set of people, or how I love to engage with a certain kind of crowd. Those sort of principles gives us an idea about our own self and how we engage in the society. The first one being meaning. So what does meaning means? It suggests that people act and behave towards the other people and things based on the meaning that they have given to them. Okay, so there is a premeditative understanding of things, and we tend to act and behave with those people and things based on the kind of meaning that we have given to them. The principle of meaning is central to the theory of symbolic interactionism. So this is crucial how we tend to, offer meaning to different people or events or incidents. For example, when we think of a Buddhist monk, the image comes to our mind. There's a certain kind of image that comes to our mind, right? Somebody who would be in a red robe and the head shaved, or a person who is bald. And there is a very calming demeanor about the person while he or she talks. Then we have some assumption about these people, and our behavior towards them will be based on those assumptions that we have made. You're not going to be extremely violent in your conversation or in your gestures, or how you're going to be physically around those kind of people are going to be radically different than how you're going to be with somebody else who is not a Buddhist monk, for that matter. Because when you are in that kind of a calming atmosphere, or with the person whom you are seeking things from, the basic philosophy around it is peace, is that of peace, is that of brotherhood, is that you're seeking things from the larger universe, or your conversation or your interaction, your engagement with that person would be around philosophy, would be around metaphysics, would be around transcendental experiences. So you would be in a lot more calmer space than some of the behavior taking over. The next part is language. The second core principle of symbolic interactionism is language. It makes the symbols and interaction comprehensible to the mind and helps us in formulating assumptions. The world is based on some sort of an assumption or the other, and we tend to consume subconsciously those sort of assumptions, and we tend to believe, and those sort of consumptions, the formulation of those sort of assumptions are based on how we look at symbols and interactions. Language tends to make things comprehensible. The fact that I've decided to talk to you in this language, or you're reading into this conversation, because we have agreed upon to share this sort of a language. So everything that I'm talking about would only make sense if you follow this language. And language follows symbols and interactions, and making them comprehensible to human minds. So we would assume that, okay, X person is talking about this or offering this. According to this theory, the naming assigned through a language, the naming creates meaning to everything, because everything has its own name. I have a name that is symbolic of my identity. So when you tell my name, people who know me, they can create a mental picture of me. So to name a thing, the knowledge about a thing is important. You need to know me in order to give me a certain kind of a name. You want to call me names. We say that you want to call me names. Okay, that person is arrogant. You can't say that that I'm arrogant, because you know me. If you know me, or if you had experiences where I have demonstrated some kind of an arrogance, you can say that, okay, this person is arrogant in one way or another. So the traits or the attributes that you tend to attach with an individual comes when you know that person, and the kind of meanings that you generate out of that human identity is possible because you have some sort of a comprehensive experience or understanding about the things. So knowledge about a certain thing is important, and thus the name indicates some feature or the kind of knowledge about those things or people or whatever. This knowledge is converted into names through languages. Languages gives you meaning to those sort of naming. For example, when we say we have dinner outside, the people who listen make sense of it based on their perspective and understanding. Okay, we are going to have dinner outside, which means people might go out and have a dinner or get something to eat or something to drink. But for somebody else, it could be a dinner date as well. So how we look at it, it could be subjective, but by and large, language holds on meaning, or language offers you interpretation of things. Last one is thought. The third core principle of symbolic interactionism is thought. The thought implies the interpretations that we have assigned to the symbols. So it is about the the cognitive understanding or the cognitive engagement that we tend to have in terms of our interpretations that we assign to the symbols. We look at a certain symbol and we tend to understand or interpret it in a certain way. So that basis of thought is language. So the the way you start thinking is based out of the language. It's drawn from the language. So it is a process of mentally conversing about the meanings, names, and symbols. Before you speak things, before you communicate with somebody else, you are also communicating with you within your own mind. Some sort of an intrapersonal communication is happening by looking at a person. You look at a person and you immediately your mind subconsciously starts judging people, or judging things, or you're going to behave accordingly. So all those things that are happening or are going to happen sooner or later are drawn from the thought process. That thought process, which is about the meanings, names, and symbols that you have associated or you have attached to in that immediate circumstances. So the thought about imagination, that sort of a thought improves imagination. How you tend to imagine, that person be like this or that before you have met. You tend to imagine a place, how you tend to imagine an incident, how you tend to imagine an event, how you tend to imagine a person's behavior. So all these things gives power to provide an idea about an unknown thing based on the known knowledge. So any kind of a known knowledge that you have. So when I say rich person, you tend to imagine XYZ things associated with it. Say about doctor, you tend to assume doctor in a certain sense, okay, a serious person, maybe curly hair, um, constantly interacting with people and all that. That person could be a regular person doing something else as well. So it depends on how you perceive or you think. So the best example of thought is to think. How you tend to think is something that gives you an understanding about what sort of perceptional idea you would have about thought in the context of symbolic interactionism. So that's more or less about symbolic interactionism theory that I wanted to talk or discuss about in this session. So I'll stop here.